The Neil Prendeville Show on Red FM.
Conversation that matters.
Katie, good morning. You sent a lengthy email and I read through it all, and as an atheist, you make an interesting point in the email about opt-out children in classrooms. Are you referencing the children of somebody who is a non-believer?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
What happens thank you. What happens in that circumstance when religious education or there's a religious lesson?
Well, if they have gone to the teacher or the principal in the first place, if the parents have flagged that the child is not Catholic, they will be allowed to opt out. But opt out generally means they're going to be sitting at the back of the classroom, not involved in the class, doing either colouring from about junior infants, senior infants, to other busy work, quote unquote. So, like maybe, I'm not quite sure what that involves.
Okay.
Some schools are better than others. Yeah.
And what is your experience of that then, say, for instance, when your children would come home and chat to you about that?
Well, we moved. My daughter started school in 2013, and once we realised that the hurdle wasn't getting her in, the hurdle was that the discrimination and the indoctrination happened in the school, and that once we bought the school book, the religion book, and I flicked through it, I realised I'm not having that. That's not teaching. It's not teaching of all religions objectively. It's indoctrinating or evangelizing her into one religion that we're not part of. So we moved her to an Educate Together school within 2 weeks.
You said in your email, supposedly opt-out children come home reciting Catholic prayers and teachings.
Yeah.
Or have ashes put on their heads without consent, or brought to mass.
Yes, they do. Whilst in many cases the schools do flag to parents, we're going to mass tomorrow, we've Ash Wednesday tomorrow. A lot of the time they don't, and they leave children being told by the bishop or the priest that comes in to put the ashes. The child is saying, no, we don't do that, I'm not Catholic, and it's still done. And in some cases I've heard of teachers having to rub it off quickly before the child is picked up from school.
So is it any wonder really then that teachers just want, primary school teachers want religion out? They can't be dealing with that.
They can't be dealing with that, exactly. And they have to do the religious certificate to become a teacher, which really reduces the diversity in schools. I mean, in terms of teachers, we just have teachers having to uphold the Catholic traditions of the school. They ask that in the interview, because obviously with religious discrimination rules, teachers can't be asked, are you Catholic, at an interview. So they're asked, one of the first questions is, are you willing to uphold the ethos of the school? And they pretty much have to cross their fingers behind their back and say yes. And then they live in fear that they will be found out. And if their lifestyle isn't of something that would be of Catholic acceptance, they do fear that they'll be found out.
Oh, it's interesting. I did hear of speakers at the INTO. I'm not cutting across you, I'm just picking up on your point there, where they say they have to hide their non-religious identities in their schools, and that would be amongst, say, members of the LGBTQ plus teachers.
Absolutely.
Who ultimately in schools of a Catholic ethos have to hide their true selves.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And even there was a report recently called the Grace Report, Global Researchers Advancing Catholic Education, and they found that less than one quarter of teachers actually attend regular Mass, and 1 in 10 self-declared Catholics don't actually believe in God. So we're talking about a lot of teachers potentially that are having to just pretend to keep their jobs.
But do you know that? But you know that pretense about, say, for instance, being gay. Surely, in 2025, no school, even under the patronage of the Catholic Church, and no principal or any other teacher or any other parent of a child in a school would be in any way bothered by a gay teacher. In all fairness,
no.
They would
nobody would. But I mean, is a priest, is a bishop on the board of management? How far can that teacher go? Promotion, can they be promoted? you just wonder, are their options limited? And also, if somebody in their full conscience cannot bring themselves to teach religious doctrine, they only have the option of 5% of schools, which are primary schools, that are multi-denomination, less than 5%.
Okay. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, no, I'll come back to those numbers in a moment. It's kind of interesting because when you talk about refusing to partake in something within the school, reminds me of Enoch Burke. Now that is different because he wouldn't use pronouns, and he actually isn't. He isn't in trouble for that. Actually, he's in trouble because he wouldn't obey the school when they wanted an investigation, etc., and was found to be in contempt of court. But the comparison I'm making to that is, what if a primary school teacher were to refuse to teach the classroom? What kind of censure would the school have for the teacher then, I wonder?
I wonder if they've gone against what they agreed to in interview. I guess, is it like any other job? If you declare something in an interview that is a lie, is found to be a lie, what kind
You're
of
in breach of contract, yeah. You're in breach of contract.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Okay.
I'd love to see somebody test it, but I think in reality, the teachers are fearful, the teachers in that circumstance.
So when we look at those numbers, right, we know that 88% of primary schools are under the patronage or the guidance of the Catholic Church, which means that Catholicism is the religion of the schools, 88% of them. Yeah. At the same time, we know that in the last census, 59% of the census respondents presented as Catholics or ticked that box. Incidentally, that's down from 69% in the 2016. So it is declining.
I think it's 69% in the 22 census, down from 76 possibly. But there's another census next year. And, we're now asking, what is your religion, if any? And do you have a religion? So, the numbers will decline. They will decline and there's a decline in religiosity in general across the country. So I feel as though the supply and demand isn't there. So if 69% of the population, that's mainly... Okay, I'm
going to have to recheck because you're giving me a figure of 69% from, I believe, 2016.
Yes. So no, that's 22. 2022, the figure was 69% of people declared themselves to be Catholic.
Do you mind if I'm not doubting? It may seem as if I'm doubting you. I'm actually doubting myself here. I'm just going to have to fact check that number.
No problem.
I believe 59% was 2022, but if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. No religion comes in second at 14%. Would you be the 14%?
Absolutely, and there was actually a further 7% who declined to answer the question at all, which may bring that up to 21%, which is like 1 in 5 of the population. Yeah, 60. Yeah.
In 2022, the census, 69% of the population. 69%. Yeah, my apologies.
So with 88% of the schools, of the primary schools, for a start, the figures don't match up. There isn't the demand there. And I think really it would be great to have the conversation. What do people feel would be missing if the Catholicism was gone from the schools? You had a caller earlier, Frankie, I think it was, who talked about morals. And why can't we teach about morals and ethics and that kind of stuff without doing it through the lens of God? We don't need a God to teach our children good morals.
Yeah, I've seen some of the handbooks and some of the pamphlets and some of the reading material and the learning material for primary schools now, and it is much broader. I think it actually is going along the lines that you've just talked about. When it talks about religion, it talks about all religions. When it talks about kindness and morals, and some of those booklets led to issues of protest. I know that when it came to LGBTQ teaching or what have you. But a lot of what you're talking is in the primary curriculum now. You probably are aware of that.
Yeah, but if you look at, I suppose you'd have to try and get your hands on the textbook they use, which is called Grow in Love. There are teachers' notes at the side of that, not obviously in the textbook that you'd buy in the shops, but I think it's not too difficult to get a hold of a copy with the teacher's notes. And even, when you're teaching, say, a junior or senior infant child about themselves and seeing themselves as an individual outside of their family and their friends, it's always done through the eyes of them being a part of, I suppose, of God looking out for them, of, that there being a God in their life. And that doesn't suit everybody in the class. We should really have religion after school for those who want it, rather than trying to have every child learning about something that their families don't necessarily believe in.
But should that just mean that somebody who doesn't believe, or they don't believe, so therefore their children don't believe, and I respect that, should not go to a Catholic school if 88%...
Well, we don't have the option, really, with 88% of the schools as Catholic. In other countries it's much lower, so you'd have a choice of schools, but we don't really. There's about 6 counties in Ireland that don't have anything other than a religious school. Yeah, they don't have a multi-denominational school, be it an ETB or an Educate Together at all.
So Kelly is suggesting by text here, if you believe as an atheist that regarding Catholic schools, then should you think that Islam should be removed from Muslim schools, or the same kind of learning from, say, a Jewish-based school or even a Protestant school?
Well, I don't believe in denominational schools at all. I think all children should go to their local school, a secular school, and learn objectively about religion. If there's going to be any teaching in religion, that it's objective and it suits everybody in the class. And then if parents want them to learn about their own specific religion, they do it they arrange that themselves through the place of worship or as an after-school class or activity with an appropriate teacher.
And we asked that question. We asked that question, on Facebook and on X, and 61% of people said they want it left just as it is. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but you see, that comes from a position of privilege, because they've had it all this time, and they don't consider the impact on people who don't want it. I mean, it's too important to think. We have constitutional and human rights too, atheists and people of minority religions. Mm-hmm. Why should we just have our children have to just learn something that's against their parents' traditions and beliefs and religion? They shouldn't be coming home reciting the Lord's Prayer or talking about God when their parents don't agree. It's very challenging for parents to deal with that.
Even the 10 Commandments, which isn't kind of a bad roadmap for all of us, really. I mean, some of it might be outdated, but yet it does talk about kindness and morals. That would be out of bounds as well.
I would say you can teach all of those. You can teach about kindness, empathy, morals without the need for a God.
You can,
it's not necessary. It really isn't.
Yeah, but for those that want a God in their life, it should be extracurricular and not in school. That's what you're saying.
My son goes to an Educate Together, and religion is after school for those who want and pay. They do pay for it, but there's never been a problem.
We're at a stage now where they want prayers taken out of the Dáil, or where there's a cross inside in the local council, where some councillors want the cross removed and no prayers at the opening. We're moving along at a rapid old clip, really, aren't we? To marginalise those that have a religious belief, or to
I don't think so. There's nothing to stop people believing in what they want and doing so in their own personal way. It doesn't have to be in a public place. Public services should be for everybody, the whole community. We don't need a prayer in the council meetings, the Dáil, any of that. People can pray quietly themselves before they go in. There's no necessity for it to be public.
But you see, some people believe, and again, this is just me talking about what we deal with here on air, that it is the eradication of the Irish culture, slowly but surely taking away more and more of our Irishness. This want to change things that suited us very well.
I think that people mix up culture and religion, and I don't think they're one in the same. And if like the Irish people were a pagan people before Catholicism was brought in, I just think that if we're going to be honest, they're very separate issues.
And for
And you can be religious.
in your own...
I was going to say that many Irish people are not Catholic. There's this perception that all Irish people are Catholic or Church of Ireland. And that if you're not Catholic, you're from another culture that's come in to move into this country.
And so for you then, the decision for you to be atheist, I mean this in the nicest possible way, incidentally, also must follow that your children must be atheist. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Until such time as perhaps they might make up their own mind, is it? Or ever?
Yeah, they haven't had any religion, they haven't had any religious teaching. So once they're old enough, they can make that decision. I do think 4 or 5-year-olds starting school, it's too young to decide for them. And, they really, I believe in teaching all religions objectively rather than just one, where indoctrination actually means teaching it unobjectively, to believe it as the truth, the whole truth. And I think children are too young. And they're taught scary stories as well. Like, children have come home saying they've had to colour in Jesus on the cross, and is their daddy going to have holes in his hands? And
yeah, to be honest, that's not the first time I've heard that from a parent. That came up on the air some time back as well, and parents found that disturbing. But can I ask you, okay, and that is scary, but finally, just before I let you go, there's something very comforting though for many people who believe that we will all meet again in another world, and it will be paradise or it will be heaven. What is the teaching for if a son or a daughter asks, well, what happens when we die? You have to say, no, we will never meet again. That will be the end. It sounds quite brutal when you put it that way to a child, doesn't it?
Maybe, but it's about living life while you're living life. It's just getting the most out of life, connections with other people, finding activities, things that give us joy, finding things in life that give us meaning, living the best life we can while we have it.
But if a child were to say to you, yeah, but I want us to meet again in another world when we're all, in heaven together, Mammy, why can't we be like them?
I would just respond that I don't know if that's possible. We just don't know. And even religious people don't know that 100% because we don't really have evidence. And we can only go with the best available evidence we have. And we don't have that evidence to know whether that's possible or not.
Would you say it's fiction then? That it's just a complete fabrication?
I can't honestly say.
Okay. Yeah. Appreciate it. How do we we don't know because nobody come back to tell us, I suppose, whether
we don't know
exactly.
Fact or fiction. Yeah. So.
Okay. Lovely chatting with you, Katie. Thank you so much. I'm sure it'll generate some more calls and comments. Appreciate it, Katie Levine.